And here we go with another rule that isn't a rule. Let's take a look.
Facebook post has people wondering if a local mall went too far while service dogs were being trained on their property. KCRG TV9's Aaron Scheinblum spoke with the mall owner and the trainer to understand exactly what happened.
This photo posted to Facebook on Wednesday shows a confrontation between mall security and a service dog trainer. The post has been commented on and shared over 1,500 times. The trainer, Erin Gray, says she was at Kennedy Mall helping train a diabetes service dog for a local family. She also had her PTSD service dog in tow.
I had my service dog, Vanilla Ice, with me, and by federal law, he is not required to be on a leash. He is well behaved enough that I can control him verbally, and he does that off leash because he can go 3 feet in front of me to be able to block my path.
Those with the mall have a different story. They say the woman put her PTSD dog on a leash, but it wasn't in her control.
The dog that she had on a leash was 100 feet back somewhere. It's clearly not under her control.
Gray said the property manager was unprofessional and threatened to remove them from the mall. She also added that the laws protect her rights in keeping her dog off leash, while Bell says they were never asked to leave.
The woman in question was not told to leave the mall, was not physically removed in any fashion. She left of her own volition later on.
The ADA clearly states service animals must be on some sort of leash unless it interferes with the service animal's work. And that's where the mall and the trainer disagree. Would you go back?
The family with Bindi that I was there training actually has an event at the mall tomorrow that they will be at with their service dog.
In Dubuque, Aaron Scheinblum, KCRG, TV9 News.
So the issue we're coming up against here, another rule that isn't a rule, is dropping a leash on the service dog or the service dog in training while out in public working. Let's see what the Service Dog Guidance 2015 has to say about this issue. The service animal must be harnessed, leashed, or tethered while in public places unless these devices interfere with the service animal's work or the person's disability prevents use of these devices. In that case, the person must use voice, signal, or other effective means to maintain control of the animal. It's important to make the distinction here that fully trained service dogs are covered under the ADA, which we're looking at the guidance for the ADA. Service dogs in training are covered by state law. So your state law may or may not have regulations about what you may do with your service dog out in public. You'd have to check those. But in my state, service dogs in training are treated just like fully trained service dogs. So I'm going to go ahead and talk from my point of view in my state. But, you know, if you've got a dog in training, be sure to check your state laws, your local laws, to see what they say about service dogs in training. You have to follow those. So I went ahead and investigated because something didn't sound right to me. I went ahead and talked to the people that were involved, that were there. I know from experience that store gatekeepers, store managers will make stuff up, will exaggerate stuff, will see things a different way than what is proper. So I thought I'd ask them. And this is what I found out. The people involved were training with their dogs. At the time the mall threw a snit fit, they were doing stays with their dogs. They moved about 30 feet away, about, I don't know, the width of a classroom away, because this is what they're training for, is controlling the classroom with all the distractions. And the dogs maintained a stay. They might have, I didn't ask this specifically, but they were working on hand signals, voice control with the dog off leash. So there might have been some sits and downs in place. but the dogs were complying with their directions. They were not out of control. The mall manager just deemed them to be out of control simply because the leashes were dropped, and that's not correct. I do very similar training with my dogs when they're younger. Stays in place. A stretched leash between a dog and a handler some distance away is a health and safety hazard, and service dogs are not allowed to be a health and safety hazard. If I would have stretched the leash across the way for me to hold on to the leash, or even if I laid it on the ground, it's a tripping hazard for others. A lot of people don't watch where their feet are going. I've had people step on my dog who's very obvious right there. People don't watch where their feet are going. So even if you should lay the leash on the ground, somebody could trip over it, fall, and become injured. So a stretched out leash is a health and safety hazard. Let's take a look at my dog doing a similar training exercise.
No, he's very purebred. Yeah. We're practicing sits and downs. He knows there's other dogs wandering around, so.
Yeah, I really does. He's doing great. You're doing a good job. You are.
And the dog food and stuffs. Thank you. Go ahead. Oh, no. Go.
He's precious.
Thank you. I'm documenting his training, so. Aha, I hear.
In this instance, I was about 10 feet away. And clearly he's under control. I told him to down and I told him to stay. And that's what he did. So he is not out of control here. This kind of training is important. If you're going to have a service dog that may need to do tasks off leash, go get rescue, retrieve items, at a distance, any of that kind of thing, this is important training. The way dogs work is you can work on it outside of public places, and that's well and good. But if you only do it outside of public places, some dogs will take that to mean that they don't have to do it in public places, because we only practice this outside of public places, so the rule must not apply here in a public place. So it's important to practice this also in a public place so the dog understands that this applies no matter where we go. Some dogs don't have a problem with this, others do. But just to be safe, this needs to be practiced. However, the dog has to be under control. It has to be under control. That doesn't mean running freely off leash. That means doing a specific task or maneuver that you have requested them to do and to maintain that. And that's what these handlers did at the mall, and this is what I did here. So let's reiterate again. The guidance tells us that the service dog can be off leash or dropped handle, or similar, if the leash would interfere with the work of the service dog. The work of the service dog at any particular moment might include maintaining a down stay while the handler moves away. Service dogs are to make disabled people's lives easier, to assist them in doing things they have difficulty doing, to help them do things they can't do. Part of that work might include just hanging out in an out-of-the-way place so the disabled person can, move a short distance away and do something else. It's a hassle to have a dog, if you're moving around freely, you know, in an area doing something, it is a hassle for the dog and for the handler to have that dog at heel, you know, every second. The dog has to get up and heel to move, you know, 5 feet. Then they lay down or sit, and then they've got to get up and move again. Nothing in the law requires that. Part of the work of a service dog at any given moment might very well be to drop into a sit or a down and stay put. So their handler can buzz around close by, use both hands to do what they need to get done. You know, this standard rule that isn't a rule that some handlers want to put on other handlers of having the dog at your side every second, well, that might work for them in their world and what they do. That doesn't work for everybody. So that is why the guidance says interfere with their work, generally, their work, not their tasks, that if it interferes with their work in the wide sense, it can be allowed. But again, the dog has to be maintained completely under control. And that doesn't mean wandering off to sniff stuff. That doesn't mean running down an aisle, you know, strictly under control. So how this evolved into a rule that isn't a rule is, I think, for many reasons. One reason might be that a handler or a low-level trainer can't manage to do this. They can't manage to reliably have their dog work with the leash dropped. If their dog isn't restrained, it's a problem. I get that. Because that is the fact in their world, they cannot wrap their heads around the fact that somebody else could make it happen. So they're relating the other dog's potential and behavior back to what their dog does. One size does not fit all. There are plenty of people out there that can very reliably train their dog, you know, for the time needed to be without tether, without being held, and the dog can be perfectly safe and work perfectly well. I think there's also a level of jealousy in that. Like I said, having the dog at your side every second can sometimes be a hassle. And they see other people avoiding that hassle, and they can't, for whatever reason. They can't make that happen. And I think a level of jealousy starts to occur. So they don't want somebody to have what they don't have. So they start hollering, pointing fingers, making up reasons why it's not okay. So I guess I want to end this by going over the way it should be again. Primarily, the dog should be held, tethered, restrained in some fashion. That is how service dogs should generally go about their business. Walking around the stores, you know, moving through life, they should primarily be tethered or leashed or restrained. There is going to be times when it's safer or more efficient to have them stay somewhere, drop into a sit or a down, and stay. And as long as they can be perfectly reliable, if kids walk by, if a dog cruises by, if they, you know, they have to be reliable. But if you can make them reliable, then that's perfectly acceptable in the course of their work, if they can do what you tell them to do reliably. The people that are upset and jealous, sounds like a personal problem to me. This is allowed by the guidance. If holding the leash would interfere with the work of the service dog, and the work of the service dog is to assist the disabled person, not make their lives harder. So no running around off leash, no going down aisles, you know, unless they're going to get help or something. No out of control or aimless wandering around. but for a specific command for a specific amount of time, as long as the dog is reliable and under alternate control, which is generally voice control, but it could be an e-collar, it could be, you know, some other device. As long as the dog is under control, it is permitted. Anyway, guys, till next video, bye. Oh, and one more thing. Sorry about all the transitions in the video, guys. A lot's going on here at my house. My level of stress is higher. And when my level of stress gets higher, I get more scattered. I have a harder time concentrating. So in order to do the video, I had to stop frequently and think about what I wanted to say. It becomes more difficult for me. So this is a function of my disabling condition. So, you know, I got it done, but I apologize for all the transitions every couple of seconds. It was something I needed to do. Anyway, bye guys.